From the White House to the clubhouse, American presidents have enjoyed the pastime of golf. Since the early 1900s, many of the nation's leaders have teed it up. One of the first golf clubs in the Washington, D.C. area was Washington Golf and Country Club, where many of the early presidents of the United States were members.
The club started in 1894. The original site was about 4 or 5 miles down the road. Well, actually, it's 2 or 3 miles down the road in Roslyn, overlooking the Potomac. The club moved to this site in 1908. Donald Ross designed the golf course. President Wilson was a member before he became president. President Taft was a member, and President Harding was a member.
Although there isn't any record of the 26th President Theodore Roosevelt playing golf, his successor, William Howard Taft, was a player before and after his presidency.
As everyone knows, William Howard Taft had a substantial girth. He was certainly by any standards overweight and weighed in excess of 300 pounds. In spite of that, he would walk around the golf course, never have any problem finish even a very hilly 18 holes, and really loved it. But he had so much girth that he had a lot of trouble kind of seeing the ball when he would address it. So either he could see it and not hit it, or sometimes he could hit it and not see it.
President Taft was about 355 pounds as a president. He lost 100 pounds when he became Chief Justice, by the way. But he loved fishing, took up the game of golf, converted one of his fishing poles into his golf club, and we're showcasing that.
There was one instance up this old family story when he was at Murray Bay playing, and he was getting ready to address his ball on the first tee, and it just happened at that time the president of the club was walking up to the tee, and he noticed that William Howard Taft was addressing the ball about 2 yards in front of the tee markers. And so, partly in fun and partly to jibe a little bit, he went up to William Howard Taft and he said, "Mr. Taft," he said, "even though you were President of the United States and you're the Chief Justice, even you have to tee it up behind the normal markers, because at this club we tee up behind the markers." At that point, William Howard Taft sort of brought himself up to his full height, said, "Listen, my good man, I will have you know that I'm hitting too."
President Woodrow Wilson took office in 1913 after Taft, and it was known he had a love for the game. It is said that on his first Sunday in the White House, he skipped church to play golf.
He was one of the most intense of all the presidential golfers. He wasn't the best, but he played even during his term of office. He would be out on the links 6 days a week sometime. He very much popularized the game, and he liked to go out with Mrs. Wilson, who enjoyed a game of golf herself. In 1919, when President Wilson visited France, because he was so known about his golf game, and the French government gave him a special commemorative trophy because of his interest in golf.
There's a great quote from Wilson's friend and physician in his memoirs. The president delighted in a quote as a definition of golf as follows: "An ineffectual attempt to put an elusive ball into an obscure hole with implements ill adapted to the purpose."
In 1921, Warren G. Harding took office. He too would play some of the courses in the D.C. area, including the Washington Golf and Country Club.
I think it was President Harding that in 1921 the National Press Club had their first tournament here, and they called it the President's Cup, and they tried to rig it so that he would win.
His handicap, I think, if he were to be given one today, would be something around a 20. And of course, they wanted to be nice to the president and be sure that he had a good time and would come back the next year and so on. So I think they did give him a handicap that might have been a little bit generous. he was a promoter of golf and was willing to get out and promote the relatively young game in the United States at that time by, first of all, donating what is known as the President Warren G. Harding Cup. He also became an honorary member of the Executive Committee of the United States Golf Association, a job that didn't demand a lot of him, but was something that he was willing to take on as promoting golf. He tried to play 2 or 3 times a week when the weather was acceptable. Sometimes I think he pushed that a little bit to the edge, and he was known as being someone who would play no matter what the weather was. If it got dark, he would quit, but that's about the only thing that kept him from continuing.
Warren G. Harding's death in 1923 inaugurated Calvin Coolidge to office. He was the first president criticized for not playing enough golf. Although there is evidence he played in a note he left his wife with the inscription off to the side, "I'm just starting out for golf." Before Herbert Hoover's term as chief executive in the White House, he was Secretary of Commerce and agreed to serve as Founders Club president for the soon-to-be-built Congressional Country Club.
As a matter of fact, we've had 5 presidents who have been honorary members, and they include Taft, Harding, Coolidge, Wilson, and Herbert Hoover. And Herbert Hoover actually was the president of the club while he was a member of the cabinet. We celebrated our 75th anniversary here at Congressional in 1999, and I think it's probably fair to say that ever since the club opened in 1924, probably every sitting president has played here at Congressional.
Following Herbert Hoover in office, Franklin D. Roosevelt served 4 terms in the White House.
He started as a very young man. Just before the turn of the century, he picked up golf. And he played in prep school. He won his club championship at Campobello as a very young man. And when he was in Washington as Undersecretary of the Navy in the Woodrow Wilson administration, he was considered one of the longest driving amateurs in the area.
President Dwight D. Eisenhower served 2 terms in office as the 34th President of the United States from 1953 to 1961. Ike was a war hero serving as commanding general during World War II, and he was an avid golfer. During his presidency, he was known to play about 800 rounds of golf.
One way that President Eisenhower perfected his technique was that he had a putting green installed on the south lawn of the White House. And I remember well, he would be sitting at his desk, and when the last visitor went out the door, he would slowly put on his golf cleats, and he would put on a cap and take off his coat and wander into the backyard, and I would work out with him there. He had a sand trap, and he was constantly working on sand shots.
People were gathering around to see Ike hit golf balls, and he didn't like people watching him. So he would duck into one of the security officers' sheds until the people went away.
Squirrels have created a nutty problem at the White House, with President Eisenhower complaining that the 4-legged vandals are tearing up his private putting green.
President Eisenhower was very serious and very thorough with what he did. He played the game the way it should have been played. He got in his cart and reached his destinations, got out and looked the situation over and played the shot and got back in his cart and went on to the next hole.
He was focused more on the game of golf, and he was truly a general out there. Whatever was, a general moved forward. I mean, he was king of the kings, and if somebody was out there, say, big boy, you're not supposed to be in front of me, I'm going through, you know.
I was 7 years old. I remember that every time I swung and hit a ball, the cameras would click.
David Eisenhower, golfer and man about Colorado, steals the spotlight from his vacationing grandfather, President Eisenhower, as he displays a swing that has the chief executive grinning with satisfaction.
I was taught as a young kid. I was being trained to go out in presidential foursomes or go off with my grandfather, and the main thing was to please galleries. So all he was doing was enjoying it. And I don't think he was contributing a lot to it, but indirectly he contributed a great deal because he was photographed. I do recall how intense the presidential golf games were, and he thought it was important socially, and following him around and seeing these beautiful courses that he played, and occasionally seeing a very famous golfer, an Arnold Palmer, or somebody who would be in the presidential foursome at a given time.
And he was a great guy to just sit around and talk to. Now, he didn't do it with everyone, but he was a man that I probably, at that stage in my life, spent more time just having a cup of coffee or a beer, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. And we've sat on his porch in Palm Springs, California, beside a keg of beer, and had a couple beers, and we talked. And we talked about things that we both enjoyed talking about. And the most flattering and surprising thing was that we liked a lot of the same things, and we talked about them. And we liked a lot of the same people, and we talked about them. We played golf, and there wasn't anything, probably other than his accomplishments as a general and as president, that he enjoyed more than going out and playing golf and getting into the game. And of course, some of the things that I enjoyed about that was he never said, well, Mr. President, he picked it up when you said that, because he knew you were going to give it to him. And we'd laugh. And so he was a guy that ranks about as high as you can rank in my estimation.
I admired Ike as a golfer. He got his handicap down to a pretty good level. He loved to play. I think he set a good standard for presidents playing golf. And so I never criticized him. I thought it was good for him, good for golf, good for the country.
First time I played with him, and he stood up so straight. And usually when you stand up straight, you weave from the top. But I said to him, I said, Mr. President, after he played, and I said, you got to stick your ass out in the back. And two guys come running at me and said, that's the president, what are you doing now? I said, he should know what that is. I said, we all have it.
We did not play golf together. And he explained to me why. He said when he goes out to play, his language is a little tough. And he didn't want a female to hear what he says. And he'd laugh.
Loved the game of golf, but did not want to be called president. He says, Doug, not a president now. I'm a general. I'll always be a general. I'm not a president. Call me general.
President Eisenhower's love for the game was expressed in his paintings.
Helen Detweiler, a very good friend of mine, gave golf lessons to President Eisenhower when she was teaching pro at El Dorado and Palm Springs. And he asked her one day, what can I pay you for this lesson? And Helen said, oh, don't pay me, I just like one of your paintings. And so he obliged and sent her one of his paintings.
Ike even presented Bobby Jones with a personal portrait at Augusta National.
One of the areas where I think that his passions maybe made a difference in golf is his passion for the Augusta National. The Augusta National was the Masters was a young tournament in 1947 and 48 when Dwight Eisenhower was introduced to Augusta and became a member there. And as president, this practically became a ritual. He would sweep in, I think it was just before the Masters, and he had his weekends and got in all of his golf just before the course was dressed up for the tournament.
Well, he was a good driver, and he was a good putter, believe it or not. He was a good putter. And he had a tremendous touch on the greens for some reason. I wish I'd had some of that through the years, but and was a very fine man. He had a good swing. He had a little trouble with his right knee, and he favored it a little bit by, he got hurt playing ball or something when he was in college.
My grandfather had a sort of a lots of injuries type golf swing, but he took it very seriously, and so he was a stickler for technique.
And I, was strong enough and big enough and different. He didn't care because he had already been 5-star general and head of the armed forces for the free world, and so if they criticized him for golf, forget it. It didn't bother him a bit.
John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was the youngest man elected president and the youngest to die in office. JFK's term was slightly more than 1,000 days in the White House, 1961 to 1963. One man close to President Kennedy before and during his term was military comrade and friend Paul Fay. A close companion for most of his life, Fay spent many days with the man widely known as the best golfing president.
I think it was just a natural thing in the family. Up there at the Hyannis, where you have the Hyannis Country Club, and that's where he started playing, I think, when he was younger.
We did play often. He was extraordinarily graceful. Because of his bad back, he really didn't have that much time. But as golf is a mind game, he was incredible against any competitor. And even if they were a very low handicap, he could sort of talk them out of the hole. He was always entertaining to be with and challenging and, really good fun.
In July of '63, on the weekends in Hyannisport, he lived just across the street from the golf links there, and so naturally he played a lot of golf there when he was younger, and so he went over this particular weekend, and before he went, he called me and wanted me to come with him and make some motion pictures of his golfing, his swing, as it were. And the purpose of the exercise was to show someone a critique for him to be able to be told what he was doing wrong or right. And he mentioned that he said someone like Arnie, it was natural that you'd only go to the top to get that kind of critique.
I'm aware of the film. I have never seen it. I was told that it had happened, and I think what happened was about the time that was all to transpire, he had a back problem, and really, for the best part, gave up playing golf altogether. And of course, in his short life, unfortunately, I think that he might have come back to the game and enjoyed it. I know he enjoyed it before he had his problem.
He was playing at Cypress Point during the '60 campaign, and he hit a 7-iron on a par 3 that was going right for the hole, and the fellow he was playing with said, go in, and Kennedy turned and looked at him with a look of horror in his eyes. The ball hit the pin, bounced away about 6 inches, and Kennedy turned to him and said, you're standing here yelling for the damn ball to go in the hole, and I'm watching the end of a promising political career. If that ball had gone in the hole within an hour, the word would be out to the nation that another golfer was trying to get in the White House.
As you remember, Eisenhower was in there for 8 years, and he figured they had 800 rounds of golf. And when you think of if another guy, when the word was out that Ike had played that many rounds, and they figured, well, what was he doing? I mean, was the demands of being president so slight that he could go out and play golf as many times as he did? And I think Jack was concerned that people would think that he was going to go out and, be a fellow who's going to go out and spend a lot of time on the golf course.
Of all the presidents I knew, Jack Kennedy was playing golf. He was the best golfer.
Although back problems would limit President Kennedy's game, he always loved the links.
Kennedy was out on the golf course to hit the golf ball and to keep moving and have fun. That's what he enjoyed, hitting the ball, hitting the shots. And he was not a good putter. He was an impatient putter, but so he didn't spend a lot of time in it. He was out there to have a good time and a healthy time.
We'd talk a little bit about golf, but then we'd talk about some of the problems that he might have when he was president. Like the Bay of Pigs, he was so distressed about the Bay of Pigs, and he said, if they think they're going to get me to run again for this office, they're out of their mind. He felt terrible about it. And then when the missile crisis came, that's when he was completely in command.
We'd laugh about the golf game, yeah, but we'd talk about politics, we'd talk about
Nixon, we'd talk about Johnson, we'd talk about other people that he was involved with. We talked about everything.
Well, I can tell you about the first time that I met him. I was a little nervous, my knees were a little shaky, but I said, it's an honor and a pleasure, Mr. President. And he said, I've been hearing about the golf lessons that you've been giving to Mrs. Kennedy, and I understand she's doing well. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, she's hitting the ball very well. And she's not really satisfied with the progress of her game, but I told her that if she gave up some of the horseback riding and the water skiing and devoted more time to golf, she'd make some improvement. And he just sort of laughed at that.
He was a terrible golf cart driver or anything that had wheels. He was a real danger. And he always wanted to drive. So we'd go jump in the cart at one point, and he wants to drive. And so he pushed down, and we're all looking forward, and all of a sudden, backward we go. It ran into the water. And our clubs are wet, and the caddy is laughing, and other people are laughing, and so on. So we finally rescue ourselves and get out and finally get our clubs. I'm not going to let you drive anymore on this cart. So anyway, I drove, and after that I always drove the cart.
Jack, in my book, I never saw him break any rule in golf. He wasn't, like on the first tee, might say, like at the San Francisco Golf Club, hit till happy on the first tee. And that's when you're just playing a friendly match. But if you're in a tournament, you play by the rules. And he played completely by the rules. In other words, if you wanted to dig a 2-foot putt, he'd say, sink it, redhead. And I've made the same thing happen to him, too.
Following the tragic assassination of JFK, the 36th President of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson, was sworn in. He served in office from 1963 through 1969. Like Kennedy, Johnson had an early fascination with golf.
Well, President Johnson was a large person. He was 6'4" and weighed about 230, 240 pounds. And at times in his life when he wasn't on diets, a rather large middle. So he had a bit of an awkward swing, let's say. But he actually could hit the ball a long way. His problem, I think, was when he was on the golf course, he just lost train of thought on everything. He really relaxed. And when he concentrated, he could hit the ball well, but he didn't concentrate that much, and he enjoyed the banter and just being outdoors.
President Johnson had a good sense of humor, and he didn't mind little wise things being said, but like golfers do, the chatter.
President Johnson was a needler, and he would needle you a lot of times while you're playing golf. But also when he had a good or bad shot, he was not demonstrative in his language, and he would have one of these little raise the eyebrow or smirk of the mouth, what have you. And when he had a particularly good shot, he would make sure everybody saw made eye contact with everybody.
The person who was probably as enjoyable to play with was Johnson. Johnson was enjoyable to play with. Couldn't play very well. But he had fun.
He'd get out of the hole and he just kind of picked up. He wasn't trying to keep score. He was just killing time more than anything else.
Well, the Secret Service was discreet. They would be in the woods. You wouldn't even see them most of the time, but they were all around. And those who were in the woods usually found the golf ball to be able to kick out of the woods just in case it was needed to have the president have his next shot.
Following President Johnson's term in the White House, Richard M. Nixon.
Well, President Nixon was then vice president when he was under Eisenhower, and he hadn't played golf to speak of. So he called me one day and told me he'd like to have a lesson. He'd like to get started in golf. We worked for about 3/4 of an hour, which would be maximum, and he wanted to go out and play a few holes. And I said, Mr. Vice President, you're not ready for that yet. And he said, no, come on, well, we went out to the first tee, and the parking lot is adjacent to the first tee. And he stood there and he hit 3 or 4 balls, and they all went into the parking lot, and I was holding my breath. Cadillacs and cars sitting in the parking lot. But anyhow, we played 2 holes, and he was happy with it.
Nixon was a terrible player. And so you wondered whether you were playing golf or whether you were out hunting balls all the way, because they were all over the place.
He could shoot around in the high 90s, in the middle 90s. He wasn't that bad a player. He may have been a herky-jerky, but I mean, he got the job done.
Well, his swing was pretty short. It's kind of a short swing. Of course, he wasn't, as I said, a very avid golfer. He just played as a recreational thing, But he could hit it. He didn't whiff it or anything like that. He'd hit it every time. It wouldn't always go straight, but he'd at least hit it.
He was not a natural athlete, but he took golf up, he studied it, he worked at it. He was a very good chipper and putter. He was not strong off the tee, but he got so that he probably had a 12, 13 handicap at one time.
Richard Nixon was somebody I played golf with probably more than Dwight Eisenhower. He was not the athlete that Dwight Eisenhower was, but he was a perfect example of what intelligence and sort of mind over matter can accomplish on a golf course.
He never cheated golf, as far as I know. I never saw him cheated golf. I mean, he would miss the shot, and then we would always say, hit another one. So we'd give him a shot. Hit another one. Come on. That's, you got to finish the course. People falling up behind you, they want you to get out of the way so they can finish their game. So you have to keep moving. And so we'd say, pick it up, we'll go to the next hole.
After President Nixon's resignation in August of 1974, Gerald R. Ford took office. While he was a politician most of his adult life, Ford was also an athlete, and his passion for sports, particularly golf, began at an early age.
I really started an interest in golf when I was about 12 years old, and I would caddy for my father and my uncle in Grand Rapids. I sort of dropped interest because then I got more concerned with high school football, basketball, and so forth. I really didn't take up golf again until I came to Washington.
As a kid, growing up, again, what you remember is, him picking up his shoes and cleaning off his spikes, and that sound of those spikes hitting the concrete, and the bag, pulling the bag out of the garage, and you could hear the heads kind of clattering together, and you could be in the house and you just knew Dad was going to play golf.
During his 3 years in the White House, President Ford's love for the game grew, and the golf world embraced him.
Gerald Ford was maybe the best athlete we've ever had as a president.
He was a never-quit kind of golfer. He played every shot and played it for whatever it was worth.
He just loves the game of golf, and being an old football player, he was extremely competitive.
He's a competitor, and he wants to do well. And when he hits a bad shot, he just knows he's a better athlete than that, and it frustrates him. So I've seen him get frustrated on the golf course. I've seen him, when he lips out a putt or something, he just knows he's so close, and he takes it very emotionally.
All my life I've competed in athletics, and competing on the golf course is just another way to have that enjoyment. And it's a challenge also to improve. Whatever I do, I like to get better.
The problem is they get too many tips. And President Ford was always one that took them to heart, tried them, and they didn't always work, but at the same time, bless his heart, he tried every one of them. He was kind enough. If I mentioned something and the next guy said just the opposite, well, he'd try them both to see which may or may not work.
Well, he had such power, he was good with the long clubs. even though they were a little errant every once in a while, but he had good distance. When a gallery wasn't around, he probably played somewhat better.
He gets a bad rap for, hitting people with the golf balls, but if you're around golf tournaments, some of these people are stupid. They'll stand right in front of you, and I personally wouldn't stand right in front of him. I guarantee you that.
When he first started playing, he was notorious for hitting spectators. But we had a great time, and he hit the ball very well. We had a lot of fun.
At times, because Dad used to take a lot of ribbing for hitting people in the gallery. And I'll tell you what, as a son, because I know how great an athlete he was, as a son, I used to take it personally. It kind of bothered me. But then I went out to some of these tournaments and watched him play. And then I started playing, and I realized how hard it is to stand on that tee box with thousands of people down each side of you, I mean, it's a tunnel.
Unfortunately, a rank amateur like myself inevitably on occasion will hook or slice, and when that happens, the spectators are at peril. Even just a minor hit bothers you, but the fact that I've never hurt anybody badly is somewhat reassuring. My golf game is mixed, good, bad, and lousy.
He can still hit his driver pretty well.
Hey, good shot.
He'll still knock it down there 230 yards, something like that, And for 87 years old, that's pretty good.
I seem to have a good swing, good confidence. I've had 3 holes in one. Now, I haven't had one in about 15 years, but 3 isn't bad for a rank amateur like myself.
President Ford was a competitor on the golf course, but his successor, Ronald Reagan, took a different approach to the game during his 8 years in the White House from 1981 to 1989.
At one time, President Reagan was definitely a golf addict. I could tell that he'd played a lot, but I don't think he played at all while he was in the White House. So I think he missed it, and I think he wanted to get back to it.
Well, I think he was quite a keen golfer. He played a lot when he lived in Los Angeles and was a movie star. I think when he got into the White House, the decision was made by the handlers that it would be politically acceptable for him to go spend his off hours riding horses, but that there was something about playing golf that was politically not acceptable.
President Reagan was a very good student as far as paying attention and listening to what you say, and he would do pretty much anything you wanted. If you told him that you're doing it all wrong, you should be playing left-handed, he probably would have tried it.
I can tell you his drives were extraordinary. I mean, he could just set up and just lace the ball and send it a country mile, and straight as a die.
We laughed a lot. He'd always shake his head. He may even mildly cursed a couple of times, but that shows you that he cares. He wouldn't let it last too long. He'd forget about it soon thereafter, but he would lead you to believe that he doesn't care about what you shoot, but the moment that he knew that he was one up on you, or he was in better shape than you, or you might be in the trees and he might be in the middle of the fairway, he'd say something, like, how's the forest in there, how's your lie in there, and he'd be out in the middle of the fairway kind of grinning, and he'd have a good time.
President George Herbert Walker Bush was destined to play golf. He was born into a golfing legacy. His maternal grandfather, George Herbert Walker, was president of the United States Golf Association in 1920. Upon leaving office, he established the Walker Cup, a biennial competition between top U.S. and British amateur golfers, which thrives to this day. In 1935, Prescott Bush, the president's father, also served as president of the USGA before becoming a U.S. Senator. The senator, an excellent golfer, was an 8-time champion at Cape Arundel Golf Club in Kennebunkport, Maine, where the Bush family has had a summer home for generations.
Well, my dad was a very low handicap player, and he was in the Senate when Ike was president. and he played with Eisenhower quite a bit. Through the eyes of my dad, I got really an insight into a president, not on issues, but just on what made him relax and what kind of a good sport he was. He loved the games and respected the rules of the game. And I vicariously learned a little more about golf because my dad used to play with Ike. I do love the game, and I love especially playing with friends.
Doesn't take long to warm up a Cadillac.
Look at that.
I don't like to take a lot of time playing the game. Just get out there and play and enjoy it. And I tell you, it's a wonderful thing for me, and I'm sure most other presidents that have played the game, because it's total diversion from your day-to-day work.
All right, here we go. You put your track shoes on and you play with him.
He literally runs from where he hits to where the ball goes. He likes to move along.
Now, I'm, of course, a great believer in moving pretty fast around the golf course. Well, President Bush made sure that happened.
When he finishes, he says, "Oh, great, I played that in 2 hours and 15 minutes." And he's not talking about 9 holes, he's talking about 18 holes.
You going for the speed record? My energy.
Hit, jump in the cart, hit again, jump in the cart, and off you go. You don't get time to put your score on the scorecard, so you have no idea what your score is.
If he practiced, he'd be a terrific golfer, but he doesn't want to spend the time practicing, so he's a darn good competitive golfer.
Didn't read the green right.
Practice swing, he'd never heard of a practice swing.
Same thing. That's just where you don't want to be.
I break out in hives if I practice. I'm allergic to it. Some are allergic to bee stings. I'm also allergic to bee stings. But I find that if I practice and move my grip a little or swing through more or, keep the head down farther, that I get hives and I get irritable, and so it's an allergy.
Anyone else playing a Callaway with a presidential seal on it?
He takes a mulligan on the first tee like all of us. I mean, whatever the shot is, he goes and plays the next one. There's too much of the sense of the game ingrained in him.
Does the vice president get mulligans too?
Whose honor is it?
He does love the game, and he's one that he doesn't take a lot of gimmies. He knows what the rules are, and he plays by the rules. That's the kind of person he is.
Sometimes the putts would be maybe a little too long to give, but you'd walk up and say, "Mr. President, go ahead and take it."
It used to be when I was president, on putting. Putt this long or this long. That's good, sir. Put it in your pocket. Today, would you mind holding it out, George?
It's always fun to play with President Bush because he's so competitive.
Hurry now. Hurry now. Hurry now. Now turn right.
I think one of the best experiences I've had with him is when he was president, he had a very tough time with his short game. He couldn't putt.
Justice! You mean?
And he got very discouraged and was about to give it up. And all of a sudden appeared the long putter in his locker one day. And we went out to play, and by golly, the first hole he sank a 35-footer, and a second hole a 40-footer, and the third hole it kept going all the way around. And suddenly this brought new life to our president.
You got to remember, as a president, his office travels with him. And even when we were out on the golf course, the telephones were with us and his staff was with us, and he was very aware of what was going on in between every hole if necessary.
I know during Desert Storm, the run-up after the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq, why I still would play golf and I still go fishing. But what people didn't understand is we had the best communications in the world, and following along in a golf cart was the communications people. So if there'd been some crisis, I could take the call. Indeed, we did take some secure calls from here.
He liked being outside, he liked the game, and it didn't matter to him what the conditions were like at all.
I'll never forget standing on the first tee at the President's Cup in the last round when they had the individual single rounds going off, pouring down rain, and he stood out there with every group that came through in the rain. No reason for it. He didn't have to, but he did. He came back and said, "Boy, I learned an awful lot about the game of golf today." I mean, it was really great. And he is a great supporter of the game of golf and a great fan, and a guy who really likes to play.
In family tradition, President Bush isn't the only Bush who loves to play golf.
Barbara's pretty good, and she loves to play, and she plays right along, so there's no, doesn't take forever. And I love playing with her.
He's played with all his sons. They are competitive, they are fast, and they are all good athletes.
Jeb is a very good player. He's a single-digit handicap as we speak, where George W. is just a great athlete and a good player also, like his dad. He hits the ball very, very hard and hits his driver very, very far.
It'll be interesting to see what his son, how he takes to golf when he's president of the United States. And I look forward to seeing that.
It seems as long as there are Bushes in the White House, there will be presidential golf. In 1993, America elected a new president, William Jefferson Clinton, who would serve 2 terms in office. Like former President George Bush, President Clinton enjoys spending time on the golf course and has enjoyed some world-famous playing partners.
I remember the first time that I was asked to play with President Clinton, and I wasn't a strong supporter of the president at the time. And I called out President Bush, and I said, Mr. President, I said, I've been asked to play with President Clinton in Australia. I said, I'm not a real big fan at the time. What's the protocol? And he says, President Bush says, he's the President of the United States, you got to respect his position, you should play. So I agreed to play, and we had a great time. We still remain friends, and I think that's wonderful. That's what the game of golf brings you. That's the bondage that happens through our sport.
We played 2 days with Ford and Clinton, and first day we played a country club of the Rockies, and the president took a few too many mulligans and shot a pretty high score. And the second day I made him play golf, and he played pretty well. But he's got a nice golf swing. He hits the golf ball quite nicely, and you know, he loves to play the game.
He loves golf. He is a golf fanatic. He is a real student of the game. It's his true relaxation. When you go golfing with President Clinton and you're out on the golf course, you talk about nothing but golf. He is very competitive, as you can imagine. He hates to lose. And he's just a load of fun to play with, but he is a real competitor.
The president is, he is probably, I would say, if he's not the most avid golfer as a president that we've ever had, he certainly is in the top 2. He's pretty good, and he likes to play as much as he can, so a lot of the pictures that the press takes with him playing in the dark with various folks, myself included, are all true. And it's not because it's because he doesn't get a chance to finish, so he likes to finish, and it really doesn't, it's kind of a challenge to play in the dark. I keep telling him sometimes he plays better in the dark than he does in the daytime. I have never seen him take a score that wasn't his true score. So I take complete and total umbrage at the fact that people criticize him for trying to be a better golfer because the only time he gets to practice is when he plays.
I think it's an unfair characterization to say that he takes a lot of mulligans. If he does take a mulligan out on the course, he still plays the first ball. But listen, this is relaxation for the president. And if he does something wrong, he's going to try and fix it and see what he did wrong. He may have just flown 10,000 miles and got out of the car to go hit the ball. I've played with him a lot, and I will tell you that his game has gotten much better. I would say he's probably an 11 or 12 handicap today. He hits a long ball. I think his greatest strengths, he's a great driver.
He's got a lot of upper body strength. He can get the club head moving at a fairly hefty speed, and he sprays the ball a little bit because he'd like to hit the ball as far as he possibly can.
I think President Clinton's swing, if I had to sum it up, he's very slow, and that's when he hits the ball the best. He has a very big swing because he's so tall.
I would say it's one that's a pretty decent swing. And I think that once he gets a chance to play a good bit, it's one that he could become a pretty decent golfer.
He can hit the ball pretty well, and he's got a good short game. So I suppose that as he moves on to a life outside the White House,
he will be playing a lot of golf and probably could get pretty good.
He's a little wild like most of us amateurs, but he really enjoys playing golf, so it's a pleasure to play with him.
February 15th, 1995 was an historic day in golf at the Bob Hope Chrysler Classic. President Clinton, President Bush, and President Ford teed it up in the Pro-Am with defending champions Scott Hoke and tournament host Bob Hope. It was the first time a sitting president had played during a PGA Tour event, and the only time 3 presidents have played together, ever.
It was a danger zone out there. It was dangerous. I hit a woman named Mrs. Early, I think on the first hole, flattened her, and drilled her right in the middle of the forehead, and blood was oozing out. She was lying on her back. And actually, my side of it is that I hit the tree in the fairway. And she took a bad shot and did in Mrs. Early. And I called her later and she said, "Oh, don't apologize, I'm very famous. My answering machine is overloaded with calls. Everyone knows who I am."
I played better than I expected. I didn't hit a person.
Well, my drives could be a little better, but otherwise I'm having a wonderful time.
There were so many people there, it was actually tough to hit it very far in the woods because I was going to hit somebody before I got too deep. But the people thought that was great. Actually, they almost looked like they were trying to jump in front of the ball just so they could say that they were getting hit by the president.
The presidents are human beings, like you and me. And they enjoy the game of golf. It means a lot to them. It gives them an opportunity to get the cobwebs out of their mind.
Well, I think presidents have this passion for golf because it gives them an opportunity to get out of the Oval Office or get out of wherever it is, get out on the course and totally concentrate on something other than the problems of the nation.
There's a quote from Hayward Hale Broun that said, "Sports do not build character, they reveal it." And you learn a great deal about the presidents and what they were really like from seeing how they deported themselves on the golf course.
Like most amateurs, they don't work on their short game, and especially the President of the United States. Anywhere inside 15 feet, it's a gimme. So they just pick it up and walk on to the next tee. I guess when you're the president, you can say, "I'm going to take this and go."